Well, hello there, my beautiful fellow space blobs. We are going to be talking about a topic today that I know so many of us are anticipating. I don't know if you're anticipating it as something very exciting because you're ready for Saturn to leave Aquarius, or if you're a little nervous because you aren't so connected to Piscean energy. But I'm hoping that today's conversation will be inspiring, help us take a little bit of the pressure off of this whole Saturn conversation, and just get us creatively thinking about energy cycles, about the experience of time, about the creative experience of being a soul in a body. And I hope it just gives us all some relaxation and some joy and some curiosity, because for me, sitting down to do these chats, they're so rewarding. And part of the reason they're rewarding is because rather than prescribing what the next couple of years is going to feel like for the collective and for every single one of us, we're getting curious. Astrology for me is an art. It's about the way that the conversation continues, the way that the art of living a life, the art of connecting, the art of conversing, the art of getting curious. And that's exactly what we're going to do here today. And, as I say that, this is one of the big feelings of this transit. There's going to be this sense of kind of from the inside out logic, ways of moving through the world that are going to be really amplified during this transit. I'm a huge fan of it. Some people probably will talk about this as a very frustrating time and that Saturn's going to be so stressed out in Pisces. But for me, this is such a fantastic combination of energies that when they come into communion can really help us feel so much more balanced with our practical side and our spiritual side. And for that reason, I'm really excited to get into this chat today. So what I'm going to do is get us comfortable, review Saturn a little bit, review Pisces a little bit, talk about what happens when these two come together, give us kind of the roadmap of that. And then I'm going to talk about some of the themes that I think will be important in our growth, in our exploration over the next couple of years. And we'll pull a few cards. So we're just getting a nice setup, a nice feel for the next couple of years, and starting to get our creative juices flowing for how we want to connect with this energy. So I'm really excited to get into it. Let's go. Saturn is going to be in Pisces from March 7th, 2023 to May 24th, 2025. So just over 2 years. And the last time that we had Saturn in Pisces, it was the mid 90s, because it takes Saturn around 27, 29 years to move through the whole circuit of the zodiac. It spends about 2, sometimes 3 years in a sign. This time it's going to be just over 2. And when it's in Pisces, I love the symbolism of this. Saturn moving into Pisces is really about a greater rounding out of a whole big experience. It's about tapping into kind of the wisdom that happens from the inside out, not just all our external ambitions and motivations and how we force things to get done, but how we experience them emotionally, how we connect into ourselves and our process much more deeply. The short story of this transit is that it is going to be about completing cycles, bringing home lessons, understanding, deepening our understanding of our lives and of what it means to be connected in this world. This is also going to be a transit that I think is going to be really interesting when it comes to our experience of time and process, because it's going to show us a little bit more of the elasticity of the experience of time and process, and that it isn't just this cut and dry set way, and that we can play with it and we can explore it and we can learn to work with time and resources and energy in new ways that maybe feel a little bit more nourishing and a little bit more rewarding. And I think most importantly, and probably the thing you're going to hear the most about this transit, is that Saturn in Pisces is really going to be about sorting through what dreams are holding us and feeling really good and really true, and what dreams and fantasies are kind of a secret poison that we are ready to let go of, and really sorting through what our imagination, our fantasies, our spirit, our dreams, our visioning is doing for us and how we work with that. So let's just kind of come back to some basics about both Saturn and Pisces, just to get ourselves refamiliarized and communing with them a little bit. Saturn is, traditionally known as kind of the Lord of Karma, Father Time. He's often associated with things like maturity, resilience, focus. He's often also associated with this idea of restriction, so simplifying down to the basics, which some people associate with frustration. A lot of times, too, this energy, this whole Saturn energy, gets associated with learning hard lessons, hard, harsh lessons. Now, I am a little uncomfortable with the way that Saturn gets pulled into the mix in the astrology world at times, because I think sometimes Saturn can get inappropriately aligned with this idea of kind of this god of retribution and punishment. And I think it's important whenever we're exploring Saturn to make sure that we're not going there with this energy. For me, this energy is really about finding safety in ourselves, via knowing that we will make choices that will really support ourselves, that we don't need all the bells and whistles. A lot of times, Saturn helps us remember what really matters to us in our lives, what we really want to strive for, where we really want to put our energy, and can help us to feel more connected to that process. I also think Saturn just symbolically is really like the experience of time in life. The experience that, we have finite time, right? That we have this lifetime, and how do we want to connect with it? How do we want to live with it? It's a deeper knowing of that process. And I think it gives us the bittersweetness of this life, as well as the beauty and the harmony and the hope. I also think Saturn can be an energy that, when we're really feeling more in sync with it, can help us move through processes that are a little bit challenging or daunting or scary, and help us feel that we have a bedrock underneath us from which we can move through life. So for me, whenever I'm working with Saturn, I want to understand this as when we're just getting back to the fundamentals of how we move through life and checking in with our process within that. And maybe we are self-punishing and forcing in order to get stuff done in life, in which case it's important that we check in with that. I've definitely had seasons of my life where I was getting my homework done and my work done and everything else done via this kind of idea of like, I'll be punished if I don't do it, right? And that is so unsustainable. And really, Saturn is about the growth that we can sustain, about the things that we can sustain over a long time. So just kind of exploring, how do we want to feel safe in our process? How do we want to feel sustained in our process? How do we want to feel that we have a bedrock beneath us that will always hold us, regardless of what comes and goes in life, regardless of the highs and lows and the material things that come and go? What will hold us? And I think that's really the core of working with Saturn's energy. And then we have Pisces, our dear final sign in the zodiac, the 12th sign. I love working with this energy so much. It has so much to offer, so much depth. I mean, it really comes to this place of, once again, this is about closing out cycles, but I think Pisces is also, it's a sign of deep compassion, healing, and perspective. It's a sign associated with coming home to the soul and the spirit, and kind of that wisdom of inside out thinking. So taking care of how we feel and how we experience emotion first before movement in the world. That's going to be a theme we're going to be working with quite deeply over the course of Saturn moving through this sign. But this is also a sign about coming home to our spirit and also feeling connected to the greater whole, not just being this little individual, which is what we experience as we kind of move through the other signs of the zodiac. We're experiencing what it means to have this individuation and then have relationships and experiencing all these other layers of being human. And Pisces brings us all back home to remembering our spiritual selves, remembering that we're spirit first before anything else, and that we're part of something bigger and we're not just these little isolated islands in the world. I think Pisces is actually maybe one of the most countercultural energies as well, in our culture at least. in kind of the culture, this global culture that we know today. And of course, that's a big generalization. There are plenty of smaller cultures, I think, that are living in their own frequency. But as the mass culture, let's say, Pisces is maybe the most countercultural. And, we often think of as Aquarius as counterculture, or maybe Sagittarius as countercultural. But for me, Pisces is truly countercultural. And I think it's why a lot of people with strong Pisces energy feel very tried by this world, because Pisces at its essence is the antithesis of what we are told to value in a life. We're told to value having a purpose and driving toward it. We're told to value having certain amounts of property or income. We're told to value pursuing something and getting it. We're told to value linear time and its scarcity. We're told to obsess about material possessions, and Pisces is not interested in any of that. Pisces is very altruistic in a way. It's like none of this stuff matters because it comes and goes, and time doesn't exist in the way that we think it does. And so we might as well let go of that need for control and that need for dominance and that need for owning. Let go of all of that, let go of this idea of ambition, and allow ourselves to float from a greater perspective. Now, of course, that has its place. I think it's very hard to live in this world if that's the only level you're living on, because we are in bodies. We do wake up in a body and have communion with others and talk and do things, and we need food, and circumstances matter, and physical circumstances affect our ability to connect to that spiritual level 100%. So it's not the only thing to care about. But when we're working with Pisces energy, this is going to be valued. All of this, the nonlinear time, the lack of material obsession, and the much deeper interest in our spiritual connection and our sense of compassion and connection to the greater whole is going to be much more prioritized whenever Pisces energy is lit up. So when I think about the combination of Saturn, this grounded, mature, lived experience of time and process and getting to see things move through process, move through time, combined with the spiritual perspective of Pisces, which is a reminder that we aren't just here to put our nose to the grindstone, sit on a pile of money, enslave others, any of those things that, have been so valued by the mainstream culture over the last many hundreds of years. It's when these two come together, there's a unity of purpose. The remembering of that spiritual wisdom, of that softness, that compassion, that kindness, that expanded worldview, that stepping outside of linear time and pressures, mixed with the grounded knowing of what's really good for our bodies, for our spirits, for our cultures, for our communities, for the way that we take care of each other and the way that we experience this world. When those two come together, the unity of vision there is very beautiful. There's an altruism to it. There's a clarity there that I think Saturn brings into the fold of Pisces. And a lot of times, Pisces gets kind of this rap for being like maybe confusing or foggy. Like if you spend too much time in kind of Neptunian or Piscean wisdom, which Neptune is in Pisces during this as well. Neptune will be in Pisces the entire time that Saturn is in Pisces. There's a lot of conversation that will be like, oh, it's too foggy, it's too fantastical, you'll just fall off the edge of the dock into the water and never figure it out. But that's only true if you've never taken the time to be with yourself, if you've never taken the time to be with your emotions, to be with your fantasy life, to look inside a little bit and see what is there. Saturn is actually going to help us do that by bringing in that grounded wisdom that helps us have a foundation. We're going to be better able to access our spiritual wisdom from a place of grounded being with our bodies, being with our spirits, being all together. It's like having a wonderful conversation between the different levels of what it means to be a human, and not just favoring one or the other, but getting to have them both sitting at the same table. So for me, this is going to be a beautiful 2 years, I think, for so many of us. Let's get into the themes that I see for this, kind of run down what it's really all about. So like I mentioned, this is going to be a season, the next couple of years, of closing out cycles. And when I say that, I mean, things are always closing and beginning. There's never really an end to that. And we're all on our own timelines and life paths and life cycles. Every single one of us is. So I think what I mean by that is kind of having some perspective on the process so far and being able to kind of see the way it all weaves together, kind of understanding it from a deeper perspective. And we're going to be seeing that. I think this is also a beautiful transit to follow up with our Saturn and Aquarius years, which were so intense, because with Saturn and Pisces here, we're going to be able to understand what just went down over the last, 27 years, 28 years, and feel it. So I think this will be really soothing and helpful for a lot of us, especially if you've been through a rough chapter. This is going to be kind of a safe harbor to process and explore and understand. As I mentioned as well, this is going to be a couple of years for creating from the inside out. So for those of you who like to-do lists, making things happen, if you have a little bit more fiery energy or something like that, this is going to be a reminder here that what's going to be really, really valuable over the next couple of years is just sit still for a moment before moving. It's not to say we have to sit in our houses and meditate all day and like float along on the water of life for time until May 24th, 2025. It's going to just be more like incorporating taking a moment to sit down and take a breath rather than being like panic. I have to answer all those emails. I have to make that phone call. I have to make it happen right now. When you get into that mode, remember to maybe just take 1 or 2 minutes to breathe and reconnect in. This will help with everything. And we're going to be noticing we're going to get asked to do that more often. So you might as well just like work with it because it will help you get back in alignment and work from the inside out rather than forcing from the outside forward. It's also going to be, the next couple of years is going to be about gaining a deeper sense of the process itself. So whatever you're creating, whatever you're trying to figure out, maybe you've been trying to figure out this whole life, or maybe just during these couple of years, it's going to be about taking a breath and remembering to have perspective about the process, about all of it. And that's kind of a vague thing to say. I think it's kind of personal, the way that perspective comes in. But once again, expanding our vision so that we're seeing it from that wiser place, that wiser sage place, rather than from the kind of ego, go perspective. That's going to be really important. And like I said, I think too, for me with that is this idea that there's bringing a spiritual kindness and compassion to our experience of time, of process, of loss, of grief, of difficult choices in life. And this is part of the reason that I love this transit. I can't think of a more soothing thought than to imagine having some guidance and some amplification in that part of life that is so real and so vivid, which is that decisions are hard and we lose things and time happens and processes happen and surprises happen. But this amplification of Piscean wisdom brings in a lot of comfort and reminders for us as we move through the physical experience. One of my favorite themes for this Saturn in Pisces is going to be emotional healing. For those of us who have been doing therapy for a long time, this is kind of going to be a season for us of like breakthroughs and things, but this is really about deeper self-acceptance, deeper compassion, increasing compassion. And I think doing that, yes, from a soulful spiritual point, but once again, Saturn brings in this practicality to it, this self-respect, the self-respect of, making choices that don't sabotage us or don't put us back in people-pleasing routines. There's a really practical, grounded application of compassion and self-acceptance that I think we're going to be seeing more and more of, which is going to be really beautiful. It's going to be soft, but it's also going to be really clear. And I think a lot of us are going to be feeling that. I think also on like the more cultural level, collective level, there's going to be a lot of reflection. We already started this with Saturn and Aquarius, but we're going to continue it on less focus on material gain, less focus on earning our way out of the troubles of this world, and more focus on what really matters. Simplifying, cutting back to some humble roots. And I just mean that in the way of like, sometimes just eating a really simple meal in the quiet of an evening can just bring tears to my eyes, because it's like somehow there's something so true in that. And there's going to be a little more moments like that, I think, happening for all of us, not from catastrophe or anything like that, but just from a longing for a return to that. I think one of my favorite themes as well about this season is going to be combing through the dreams and the fantasies in our minds, in our bodies, in our generational lineage, all of that. Communing with our haunted houses, as I call them, those places in ourselves where we go over the scariest parts of our lives, the places we fear unworthy, the fears that come up in the middle of the night, understanding those haunted houses, seeing them with greater compassion, releasing them, as well as getting more in tune with the truest dreams within ourselves. And on that front, you'll also often see, I think, a lot of notes about this transit being about bringing dreams that really mean something to us into the world and kind of getting serious about them and bringing them into real life. But I think probably the more important part of that process is going to be discerning the this from the that, discerning what is truly our dreams and what is not. And once again, it's kind of like, I think, did Einstein say that, if he has a problem, and he has 30 minutes to solve it, he'll spend 29 minutes. I think I'm misquoting this, but it's pretty close to what he said. 29 minutes thinking up a great question and 1 minute or like 5 minutes solving it. And I think that's very similar here. It's like taking the time to really get clear about what is truly ours that we want to bring to the world is going to be the essence of this transit. And then everything that we do externally from that is going to feel a lot more connected, a lot easier. And finally, I think one of my favorite themes, I keep saying that, they're all my favorite themes. They're all my favorite themes, but it's a deeper commitment to respecting and caring for our inner dreamers and our inner visionaries. I think we are trained very early to have a lot of disdain for our dreamers and our spirits and that part of ourselves. Even those of us who seek this out and spend our lives connected to it, which I know is true for me. I definitely have learned that, but you don't really know. You don't really know what you need to do. You're not really being pragmatic or reasonable. I think that this is a transit that brings it's reminding us that dreams and visionaries are an important part of the whole, and they deserve respect, and they deserve foundations to stand upon, and they deserve a moment to shine and to be heard and to work with the logical and the practical. And I think that sense of respect and dignity that Saturn brings to any conversation is one of my favorite things about working with Saturn, and bringing it here into this very compassionate spiritual sign that has us remembering those deeper layers of ourselves really helps in creating a deeper sense of compassion for everybody, ourselves as well as the whole world. So I'm excited. Let's pull some cards and feel through the intuitive wisdom of the next couple of years. And once again, let's hold this all really lightly and not feel like we're setting the next couple of years in stone. I mean, we are working with Pisces, the mutable water sign. So there is a lot of flexibility in this experience. There's going to be a lot of flexibility, a lot of ability to kind of move around and try different things out and see where it feels good for you. And I think I want you to remember that empowerment with this, that it is an exploratory transit. It's not set in stone though, and it's about finding what foundations feel good to you, what practices feel good to you, what ways of taking care of yourself feel good to you. So we'll be playing, we're going to be exploring. Knight of Pentacles, very Saturnian kind of cautious energy there. But I don't know. I'm actually kind of a fan of Knight of Pentacles, and we'll talk about it. I'm going to pull a couple more cards. Four of Swords. Also, I mean, these cards are like the underrated cards, and I'm very excited to explore these with you here. Ten of Swords wanted to come out. There's the ending of those cycles. Let's pull one more. I like the number 4. It's very good. Oh, 2 more cards wanted to come out. Strength and judgment. Okay. We have a lot going on here. You can kind of see how it amplifies over the course of this transit, and that we'll be playing with it as we go. So we start off with, once again, some pretty cautious energies here. So the Knight of Pentacles, sometimes he gets this rap for being overly cautious, like waiting too much and like holding back too much and not wanting to make a move unless he knows exactly what's going to happen next. But the thing that I really like about Knight of Pentacles and working with this energy is he's taking a lay of the land. He's taking stock of what's there. He's taking the time to be observant. And in our culture, is this valued? Not so much. Of course, we can spend too long here. We don't want to spend the whole transit just watching, right? But what I kind of get from this when I see this is take a moment to look around when we begin this transit. Take a moment to get your bearings, find a good touchstone that you want to come back to again and again. Find something that brings you some joy and tap into that and come back to it. Knight of Pentacles always reminds us that it's valuable to take a look around and be the observer for a moment before we take action. So yes, we don't want to spend our whole transit here, but I think at the beginning, this is a really nice place to be, finding the feet underneath us and getting oriented. Now, the next card really reminds me of this whole inside-out approach to Saturn in Pisces. 4 of Swords is, sometimes I've nicknamed it the nap card. And 4 in tarot is really interesting. It's this little rest point when we've just been through a creative process, and it's a point of integration and incorporation. And the 4 of Swords here is about taking a moment to rest. But I really see this, both the Knight of Pentacles and the 4 of Swords, as the moment you take when you check in with yourself. You feel that connection to your spirit, to your center, and also to your body, also to the wisdom of your body before moving forward. And that doesn't require 10 weeks of solitude and silence. It honestly is something that we can do in little bits throughout the day, throughout the week. And so both of these are kind of a reminder that checking in, taking observant moments is very valuable and will help us actually move through life more smoothly, more connected, with more connection. So there's a big reminder there of one of the big principles of this energy combination. You got to check in first before forcing externally. Now we get into the center of this reading, we hit the 10 of Swords. I love this card. This card makes me feel like I can just exhale. Totally exhale. This is about the end of a long battle, the end of a long transit. I know a lot of us feel that after Saturn in Aquarius and after some of the work we've done with Capricorn, with Pluto, that we're a little tired, we're a little worn out, maybe we're a little battle weary. But the 10 of Swords is the release. We can let go of certain battles that we're trying to fight, things we're trying to control, things we're trying to make happen. Once again, this is another one of those deep principles when we're working with Saturn and Pisces. When we feel like we need to control everything in order to be good people, to be responsible, to be mature. This is a chance to really look at where we try and fight battles and control in order to feel that we are respectable, mature, and all of those things, and let go a little bit. Let go where it makes sense to let go. And we're going to be parsing through what that is. And that's a gentle process that I want us all to take our time with, but it's something that's going to be coming up as we work through a 12th sign transit like this, Pisces transit like this. Now, we get to the end of these cards and we start getting into major arcana, like not drama, major arcana emphasis. And I think this is really interesting. There's like this momentum that builds with this transit, which is so often the case, right? We build our wisdom, we build our knowledge, we build our poetic ability to have a conversation with a certain energy. And we get into the strength and judgment. I just love this. Strength is the Leo card, interestingly enough, and we're going to be doing some work with Leo this year. But, strength is also about, it's not about forcing. It's not about making things happen. It's not about unleashing that kind of wild ferociousness on everything in order to get our way, but it's about learning to commune with this wild nature and our compassionate spirit self, and having communion with those. And also, strength then is about how owning that communion, taking time for that communion, is how we really take our place in our lives and our communities, in the world as it changes. It's a reminder once again of this process of coming back to that point of communion between body, mind, and spirit over and over again as the source of empowerment in our journey. And we finally get to Judgment. This is a card, Judgment is such a funny name for this card because this is a complex conversation we could get way into, but Judgment is really about release, forgiveness, letting go of battles, shame, judgment of our past generations. This is often a card that I find is really tied to generational stuff. And I'm not here to tell you need to forgive everybody. Like, that's none of my business. We all are on our own journey with that. It's hard sometimes. There can be anger and a lot of emotions with things that have happened. But there is a message here, which is that this is a really beautiful time for exploring them. Exploring what we can let go of, what we can forgive, what we can release, what we can put down. And say, I don't have to hold this anymore. And, it's so interesting to me the way these cards came out. It just, every time it's center, hear yourself, look around, let go. And I can't think of anything that's more Piscean than that. But also the thing is that we think of these things at odds, this spiritual kind of expansiveness and this grounded practicality as these opposites, when for me, they make so much sense together. Isn't it the most grounded, pragmatic thing to do, to be aware of our bodies, aware of our spirits, to check in with ourselves so that when we walk into a room, we walk into a conversation, we aren't unleashing our wounds on others. We aren't, living our lives through some other lens that doesn't fit with us. And for me, all of this conversation just has really brought home even more how it all just makes sense. So this has been a long chat. I feel like I could talk about this topic for a long, long time. And if you haven't joined my Patreon, we do talk about this. We're devoting the entire month of February to Saturn and exploring Saturn and getting ourselves connected to it on my upper tier on the Magic Makers circle. So I'd love to see you over on Patreon. I'm really loving offering all of this up for you. And I'd also love to see you on Instagram. And of course, I would love, love, love it if you would let me know what Saturn and Pisces means to you. And if you would subscribe and like this video, it really helps me to continue to do this work. I appreciate you all so much. It is such a joy every time to sit down and get to have these conversations. So thank you so much for being here. We'll continue this conversation. We'll probably have to come back and review this a little bit as we move through it. So be sure to keep an eye out for the next time we have a chat. Talk to you all so very, very soon.